This is Joshua here for Seconds Out, joined yet again by Gareth A Davies here. Gareth, starting it bright and early Monday morning, hitting the ground running. How is everything, my friend? You all good?
All good. Very good weekend of boxing. Big Talk Sports show on Saturday night had Anthony Yard on. That was interesting. Nick Ball came on. Tony Bellew rang on his way back from Nottingham. We were talking about divisions or leagues in boxing. He doesn't think it's possible. I think it's a really tough thing to do um, because of the fractured nature of boxing with, different sanctioning bodies and world champions. And I think, yeah, it was a good show. And then I had a very lazy Sunday, which is unusual for me. So I'm up and raring to go this morning. I've got electrician here, so noise in the background is just an electrician doing work on lights outside here.
Fair enough. Well, let's start off by talking about some of the weekend's action. We'll start off with the first show of the weekend here in my beautiful, wonderful home of Nottingham. We saw Dalton Smith top the bill against Walid Ouza, but I think it's only right we talk about that chief support between Conor Walker and Harry Scarf. Um, just one of the best comebacks we've seen. I know it's early in the year, but I think that's a knockout we'll be talking about for the rest of the year from Conor Walker there. What was your reaction to seeing Conor Walker flip the script?
Well, it was one of those. Conor Walker's never going to outbox Harry Scarf in many ways, and he's ahead on points and he's winning the fights, and you know that Conor's looking for the knockout, and he gets it, and it's a very and behind on the cards as well, and it's always a dramatic moment when that happens, and huge celebrations. I think we even saw Eddie Hearn, didn't we, celebrating in Las Vegas where he was. The zone cameras had were trained on Eddie Hearn. No, it's fantastic performance. And it's a dramatic, fantastic performance in many ways. The reaction was amazing. I think there was a lot of drama behind the scenes afterwards in the dressing room, people upset and people elated. And I saw an interview with Sam Jones where he was trying to explain what was going on in the backdrop afterwards. Fantastic victory for Conor Walker. But that's boxing at its most theatrical, at its most dramatic, and fine performance. Belief. He showed belief all the way through.
And looking at that main event as well, Dalton Smith, the belt collector, collected that final belt that he needed before he moves on to look at world honours. The European title picked up in a one-round demolition job. What was your thoughts on his performance?
I'm right in thinking he's got the Commonwealth as well, isn't he, or not? Has he
He
had
has
the
held the Commonwealth previously,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, British, Commonwealth,
European.
European. It's time for, we were saying this on Saturday night. It's time for a world title, or certainly close to a world title opportunity for the man with two axes in his hand. Look, I think there's a case for saying that Usa looked slightly overawed all week. He didn't look like he was there to take the title of the man who became the nemesis of Dalton Smith. Smith is very mature now. I think he has been for a year or so. I think, what was that, his 13th knockout in 17, 13th stoppage in 17. He's a very powerful fighter that's come up really well in terms of graduations through the ranks. And at 140 now, in a very difficult division at the very top. I was going to pull up the rankings in the division. In a very difficult division, he now has the opportunity to really say that he's mature enough to have a look at some of the top fighters in the division. When you look at Richardson, where is he? Yeah, Richardson, Hitchens, Jose Valenzuela, Alberto Puello, and Devin Haney, champion in recess, and Tio Lopez, Jack Catterall, Arnold Barboza. Liam Paro. There are some extraordinarily Ryan Garcia, Rolando Romero. There's so many opponents in that division. You could get into shark infested waters very quickly. And they haven't really said who they fancy for him next, even though in the 24 hours since the fight, Adam Azim's name came up again, didn't it?
Well, Adam Azim does fight this weekend, but just quickly staying on Dalton Smith. Speaking to him in the immediate aftermath of the fight of the weekend, he said that all his eyes are on March 1st. He wants to target the winner of Puello versus Sandor Martin. Speaking to Frank Smith, he said if it's not a world title shot, they really like the Liam Paro fight.
Yeah.
Which fights, which fight would you rather see for Dalton Smith next? The world
Well,
title or Liam Paro?
he's ranked two in the WBC, so that's the natural place for him to go. I think Alberto Puello and Sandor Martin, the winner of that, both styles suit him. In my view, both those guys, I'd fancy him going in against. Um, I think the thing is with Dalton, he's going to have hard nights now. The gate's going to slam shut behind him at this point, moving on and up. I'm sure he's ready for these big challenges now, where he's actually tested in the sense of he's going to stretch himself now. It's not going to be an easy task from here on in. But I feel that for about a year, there's been a big change in him. Like he's ready for these contests. And I don't think they should hold him back too much longer. I mean, Eddie Hearn is in that grouping that Turkey Al Sheikh has made the fights with. Devin Haney is matched at the moment. I can't remember who else.
Jose Ramirez, I think.
Jose Ramirez, yeah.
With.
And obviously Ryan Garcia with Rolly Romero. There's two semi-finals and they're planning semi-finals, and obviously they're planning for those guys to meet probably in September. So those guys are out of the picture. I think down the line, the fight I'd like to see is Dalton Smith and Teo Lopez at some point. I think that's a super fight for him. I think Lopez will fancy the challenge. I think he'll say that Dalton Smith doesn't have his movement. I think that's a fight I would love to see Dalton in. Maybe that's a year away. Maybe it's an opportunity to get Teo Lopez over here. Maybe it's a big money fight. But that division is so rich in talent. I mean, weirdly at the moment, I think BoxRec, I was just looking at this before the weekend, BoxRec have Dalton at 3, Adam Azim as 2, Jack Catterall as 1, and Josh Taylor as 4 in the UK. Have you seen that in the UK rankings?
Yeah.
Do you reckon that Josh Taylor gets beaten by Dalton Smith at the moment?
I'd need to see Josh Taylor fight first, but if we're going off recent performances, I couldn't split him. I wouldn't be able to split him because we've only seen Josh Taylor fighting at the
Yeah,
top level, and we've not
yeah.
seen Dalton Smith fight at that top level outside of the Zepeda fight. So it is a proper 50-50 in who you'd call to win in that one for me.
Look at those top 4 though in
Mm.
Britain alone. It's incredible. It's a blessing and a curse that he is now more of a blessing, I think, that through Father Mr. Smith, the coach, bringing him through. Grant has timed it perfectly with him. We know how respected Grant is in the industry in the sport, so onwards and upwards for him. If they're going to go the route of Puello, then that's great, or the winner of Puello and his opponent, so Sandor Martin. Both great fighters. He's got it all ahead of him. And you were with him on Saturday night. I was in the studio at Talksport. We were hoping to speak to him. He carries himself so well now. He feels what he's capable of doing. And you're biased anyway, because he's just done the deed in Nottingham and you've been around him. And all the routes from Nottingham, I know he's Sheffield, but all the routes from Nottingham probably lead to a top 10 fight now.
Absolutely. Moving away from there, looking at some of the news from last week, the Eubank Jr. versus Benn undercard is now official. We've seen some great matchups on there. What do you make of the whole undercard
Let me
first?
get it. I've just got it written down here. Just one sec.
No worries.
I've got it here. Well, as I said, spoke to Anthony Yard at the weekend. Obviously, he's having a trilogy fight with Lyndon Arthur. Um, we'd like to see him in with Joshua Buatsi, obviously, but he's lined up for that February 22nd card. I don't know whether there's politics going on there. Anthony Yard went into the fact that he believed that he was going to be fighting Joshua Buatsi next. Um, there's a banana skin there for that to happen with. I don't want to call Callum Smith a banana skin. The former world number one at super middleweight could upset the apple cart there. If Callum's on his game, that's a very tough fight to call. I see Buatsi as the marginal favourite. It's a very tough fight to call. In a way, Anthony Yard said he's still carping from that first defeat to Lyndon Arthur, still annoyed about it, and he's going to go in there and produce another aggressive performance. I like that fight. It's great to see Liam Smith back. What's he got left? Billum Smith and Brandon Glanton, Vidal Riley and Chevin Clark. I really like that. I like that fight. It's not, and it doesn't overwhelm, but it's going to be a great occasion. It's going to be a great build-up. We're comparing everything to the Feb 22 card at the moment, I think. But it'll be a great occasion on April the 26th at Spurs. I think there'll be 60,000 in there. And I think all the guys will raise their game. Chris Billum Smith, I don't know where, it's, maybe it's I don't know where it gets him. Glanton is 11 with the IBF, so it's a fight for him that he's maybe treading water in some ways.
Outside of the main event, which fight do you think has the potential to steal the show the most?
Riley and Chevin Clark for me is the one that really kind of whets the appetite, because we know that Chev is a big, heavy hitter, and that's what he likes to do. Vidal Riley has been frozen out of the game in some ways against that group of British cruiserweights that we'd like to have seen him in with. Obviously, it was going to be Isaac Chamberlain, and perhaps we know now why that was cancelled, that he got the opportunity on this card potentially. I don't know if it is that or not, but yeah, that's the one that entices me. And if it is the opener on the night, then brilliant. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be further up the card, but it's good that it's announced. I'm so glad the fight is on and the event is on, because I really do think it will be an event. I still fancy Benn to be dangerous early on and Eubank to win on points in this fight. I just think he's too big, but we shall see as the weeks progress.
What do you make of the report from the Times saying that Sky reportedly anxious about showing Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn?
What, because of Benn's clomiphene tests? That's what it was reported as. I don't see that. I mean, I see that as not really making sense, because they've shown. I thought the reason given was that he had those positive tests, and it hadn't been transparently explained. I see that as not really aligning with fighters in the past. I just didn't get it. I didn't get it as a story. And I also think that given that the fight was underwritten and signed and taken over the line in the end by Turki Al Sheikh, that it's a DAZN special in lots of ways. No, it's going to do massive numbers in my view. I think it might well do 1 million pay-per-views by the time they sell it and hype it, as they will, and get the fathers involved and look back in time. As we spoke about last week, we looked at the rich history of the family feud, or the feuding families. Yeah, I thought it was an odd story. I thought it was an odd line. And I've never seen Sky take a decision on fighters who've been banned in the past or suspended in the past coming back and fighting and then not showing their fights. I don't recall that they've done that ever before.
Who do you think who do you think faces the bigger challenge going into fights? Think Eubank Jr. draining himself down to 160 with the rehydration clause, or Conor Benn going up 2 weight divisions to 160 pounds?
Well, he's got £10 to put back on in the following 24 hours. I think Frank Smith, I think you spoke to him about this. He did a very good job of explaining that it's probably it's a tough weight cut for Chris, but £10 is a lot of weight to put back on anyway. It's not like I think the last time they were due to fight, or the first time they were due to fight when it was cancelled. I think he was having to make 157, and then he had £6 or £7 he was allowed to put on.
Yeah, I think it was 164. I want to
Yeah,
say
so
he was allowed to bring it up
£7.
the next
So
day.
he's got better options this time. Yes, he's 2.5 years older. Yes, he's been stopped by Liam Smith. But I think there's been a bit of an exaggeration about how difficult it may be for him. That it's unfair, but I think he's happy with it. The tougher fight is definitely for Ben. Yes, he's fresher, but he's a much smaller man. He's coming up the weight divisions, and he's been fairly inactive for 2.5 years. So I think it's a tougher fight for him, and that's why he's got to go for it early on in the fight. It's going to be an amazing spectacle, but I do think Eubank's fought at the higher level as well. People love to write Eubank off, but you look at some of his performances, even at super middleweight, where he's probably produced his best performances at super middleweight. No, I think he'll be fine, and I think. Look, any story around these two gets exaggerated because of the drama and because of the things that have happened in the last 2.5 years, the things they've called each other. If we recall, Chris Eubank Jr. had originally, in spite of the clomiphene tests, agreed to go ahead with the fight in the background, but he's had second thoughts about that and he's expressed it in recent times. But it's going to be a big spectacle. I think I said to you earlier on in the year, the start of the year, if we get this fight, if we get Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, if we get some of the other big fights that are going to take place this year, if we get Nick Ball against Naoya Inoue, I know you'll come on to that. We're sailing with British boxing at the moment. It's an amazing time to be involved in the sport in this country.
You mentioned people exaggerating a lot around the Ben Eubank fight. Speaking to Frank Smith last week, he said that Conor Benn's always going to be seen as the devil in the public's eyes, and that's why such a fuss has been made over this rehydration clause. How do you react to that statement?
What you mean that Conor Benn's seen as the heel, as the villain in this
Mm.
contest? Well, for
Just,
once, it's normally Chris Eubank Jr. who's the Bond villain in his matchups. For once, he can sit back and play the cool guy, while Conor Benn, plays the heel in this. I think that's what you're aiming at, yeah.
mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the older, more wizened fighter. He's the one with more to lose. Um, if Eubank wins, it'll be "I told you so" moment. Weight divisions for a reason. He's too big. Conor Benn hasn't fought at world level yet and hasn't proved himself, so we should have expected that outcome. So it's all to prove for Conor Benn, but he's up to that kind of challenge. I saw him saying this week. Well, he was being interviewed this week, and he was saying that he'd rather earn the money than win the world title at the moment. And I get it, because he's lost, what is he, 28 now? He's lost 2.5 years of his boxing life. Yes, he fought twice under a Texas license, but he's lost a lot of time in his career, some of the best years of his career. So he's making up for lost time. I think he revealed he spent £1 million on defending himself in court.
Another thing that was mentioned when speaking to Frank Smith last week was I asked about the rehydration clause, and he said that it's a term that is just overused, and it realistically it's just a second day weigh-in. Obviously, the IBF have that mandatory process of the second day weigh-in for all their title fights. What do you make of that? And Frank Smith defending the rehydration
Well,
clause.
I think again, it's how you spin it, the semantics of how you spin what is rehydration or what is weight gain afterwards or what is kind of getting your body back to normal. I think, as he said, there's nothing unusual about this, um, apart from the fact that he is a much bigger man, and they didn't want to give him the opportunity to come in at 185 pounds, 190 pounds, or whatever he might have weighed. Probably not as much as that, but they needed to draw the line somewhere. They've taken the IBF rule, haven't they? Um, I think he was just look. What you got to remember with Frank Smith is, even though he's promoting Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. is his brother-in-law. So, and people forget that obviously he's with Emily, Chris's sister, and there's a family tie there. And in many ways, I don't think he is distant from Chris. He's someone that will be um, speaking to Chris, will be around Chris, will have a relationship with Chris. So I think he did right by swinging it back the other way and saying, look, this is nothing unusual for Chris Eubank to do. There are weight cuts and rehydration clauses involved in a lot of boxing matches, and I think he was trying to suggest it had been taken out of context and just dropped in as a headline, and was being hyped that Chris Eubank Jr. was being told he couldn't go above a certain weight and it would um, impact on his performance. We know what father will say. I'm worried for my son, as he will always say. So we await, actually we await the reaction of senior once he's on board and involved in it all. I hope the fathers are at the press conference, which I believe is going to happen in a couple of weeks' time, or within a couple of weeks.
Moving away from this, you mentioned Naoya Inoue. He was back on Friday morning or Friday lunchtime for us in another destructive performance. While not the desired opponent we were all expecting to see in the ring that night, regardless, he gets the job done and sets himself up for a huge 2025. What did you make of Inoue's performance, first of all?
Well, I mean, what do I make of Inouye's performance? I mean, it was predictable. I think most of us had picked a stoppage for him in the first half of the fight. Um, I think his opponent did the wrong thing by saying, "Come on, then bring it on." I don't think you do that to Inoue. Um, he's incredible. I think, what was it, 27th knockout of 29, was it 27th out of 29? I think it was, or 26th out of
I think it was
29.
26 out of
Yeah, he's
29.
an incredible guy. I mean, my big debate is where he goes next, and is it Nick Ball, or is it Murad Akhmadaliev, as Eddie Hearn is saying he's going to put pressure on for that mandatory that Akhmadaliev carries at the moment for Naoya Inoue. Um, I get Eddie's point that Akhmadaliev's been fighting for this opportunity. He's 30 years old. Eddie's been pushing him for 5 years now. Um, he's worked his way into that position. Naoya Inoue has had, maybe you could call it, a couple of facile defenses of his undisputed. Um, Sam Goodman, obviously, the fight was cancelled. Now it looks like, well, Eddie's not happy because now it looks like Nick Ball might be the next opponent, or even though Nick Ball has obviously got a fight himself coming up um, that he needs to come through. I spoke to Nick Ball on Saturday night. Look, I think Naoya Inoue, Eddie's saying that he'll vacate that belt, and Nakhmadaliev will pass on through the portal and probably fight for a vacant title at some point. I think Naoya Inoue is moving up to featherweight, certainly for one fight. Um, and I think it looks like if it's up to Turkey Al Sheikh, who's the man with the globe in his hand right now, it looks like it's Nick Ball. I had an argument with some of my colleagues on Saturday night. I think it should be in Japan rather than Riyadh or the UK, because you want 55,000 there. You want all of us traveling over there. You want the circus traveling over there. You want a big Riyadh season event in Japan at the Saitama Superdome. I've covered a couple of events there and worked on TV for the UFC. It's an amazing place. Um, where would you favour it being?
If you hadn't mentioned Japan, I would have presumed Riyadh, but now that you mentioned taking everyone over to Japan, I mean, hopefully I could get on the flight as well and join everyone in Japan. But I think that'd be a spectacle of an event, taking it out there, a little Riyadh season show in Japan. Anyway, Nick Ball can get a good undercard out of that as well with some of the fighters from Japan. I think it makes sense.
That was my argument, that it makes sense to have Ball travel to Japan, 55,000 people there, a big kind of moment where you see the expansion of Riyadh season into the Far East, to a Japanese event. You know that Naoya Inoue will bring a 55,000 crowd. He deserves certain advantages for stepping up to featherweight. Nick Ball's argument, fair enough to him as well, is hang on a minute, I'll be the champion, so I'm the A side. But I mean, in all fairness to Nick, I'm not being rude to Nick, Naoya Inoue is going to be the A side still in terms of the draw, because you ain't going to get 55, you ain't going to get 10,000 fans traveling over to Riyadh to see Ball Inoue. I don't think. I mean, I could be proved wrong on that. You could probably do it at Anfield and get a massive crowd as well. But I think um, I I can see them wanting to give some advantages, maybe in terms of home turf and a guaranteed giant crowd for Naoya Inoue. I think it'd be a great spectacle to have it there. That's just my feeling about it, as being instinctual over it. But I could be proved very wrong over it.
Moving away from there, just my last one again. A lot of talk about Anthony Joshua this week, about what he should do next. So I guess my first question is, a lot of people debating whether he should continue or not. Do you think he should carry on boxing?
Well, if he wants to, then of course he should. It's not like he's got nothing left. Look, he suffered a catastrophic knockout in the fifth round in September to Daniel Dubois. I mean, just depends where he is mentally, emotionally. He looked good when he was in Nigeria with those videos and his Instagramming over Christmas and New Year. He laid out already that he wants to fight Tyson Fury and Daniel Dubois in 2025. I'd love to see him have a couple more fights. But you also get reports. I think Eddie Hearn mentioned, oh, he's struggling with it. I think he's mentioned that. He's struggling with the comeback. That was prior to him announcing that he'd like to fight in 2025. I don't think he should walk away right now. I think he's got opportunities to be in terrific fights. I think I'm on record with you and with many other people as saying that I do think we should see Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. It's a fight that completes the era in lots of ways. I think again it would be a travesty if the two men don't meet. I wouldn't mind seeing him in against Dillian White very soon. I wouldn't mind him fighting Deontay Wilder. And then outside that, there is the rematch with Daniel Dubois if he wants it. But Daniel Dubois seems to be going his way. He's chasing Alexander Usyk for the undisputed title and anyone else, as he says, if he defeats Joseph Parker on February the 22nd, which is now only a month away, incredibly.
Any out of all those names that you have mentioned there, who tops that list of who you'd like to see Anthony Joshua fight next?
Well, I mean, I've got to say Tyson Fury, but I think the problem for Anthony Joshua is Tyson Fury might decide he's retired for the next 3 months and then say, now I'm back. And then in that time, Anthony Joshua doesn't want to be left hanging. So right now, I would say fight Dillian White.
What about Dillian White in particular do you like?
Well, I just like the rivalry between the two. I think there's, we were, what were we, 6 days away from seeing them fight each other. Um, when obviously Robert Helenius stepped back in, and obviously he got his ban, didn't he, for testing for clomiphene, weirdly enough. Um, I just like the rivalry between the pair. I think I don't think I'd like to see Anthony Joshua step into a fight with Martin Bukola. Well, I would, but I don't think it's good for him. Because another catastrophic knockout, and it probably is all over. Um, and maybe I'm saying save yourself for Tyson Fury, or maybe just sit out till Tyson Fury comes back. I think he will come back, but they need to start speaking to these guys and get that fight in the pipeline.
Just my final one. Will Anthony Joshua ever win another world title in your opinion?
If he stays around for 2 more years, well, if he wins a shootout with Daniel Dubois, then could win a world title again. Um, it's a tough one to call. I would say probably no. Like I don't think Tyson Fury will win another world title again.
So do you think that era is over and we are witnessing that changing of the guard, I guess you
Yeah,
could
I
say.
think so. I think we are witnessing a change in the guard. Daniel Dubois, Moses Touma coming through, um, Joseph Parker having his last few opportunities. Yeah, I think we are seeing a changing of the guard. There's little doubt about that. I don't see an appetite for these guys necessarily to go on more than a couple or three more fights. Maybe Fury, only maybe one more.
Well, Gareth, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time as always on this Monday morning, and we'll catch up again next week. Cheers.
My pleasure.